The wind howled across my ranch like it was alive, ripping through the wooden fences and carrying a dry, biting grit that scratched my face. I'd been checking on the south pasture when I saw them. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. The rainstorm had passed only moments ago, leaving the land slick and raw, but there, lying among the wreckage of my dying cattle, were two figures. At least, I assumed figures. They were enormous. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. One of them was short, though still taller than any man I had ever seen in this valley. The other was colossal, easily pushing 7 feet, her shoulders broad enough that they seemed to blot out the light from the clearing sky. They were women, unmistakably so, yet their size was unnatural. Legends whispered among the settlers of Apache giants crossed my mind, stories I had dismissed as campfire myths. But there they were, bleeding and gasping, and if they died out here, no one would know. No one but me. I approached cautiously, every survival instinct screaming that helping them could be the end of me. Apache warriors didn't forgive trespasses lightly. The storm had scattered the herds, but the women's injuries were far worse than a simple tumble. The shorter one had her side torn, dark blood spreading across her intricate clothing, her beadwork crushed into the mud. The taller one had a deep gash across her forehead, her breath rattling like it carried the weight of 100 winters. I had no choice. I knelt beside them, hands trembling, fingers slick with wet soil and blood, trying to assess what I could do. Even lying down, the sheer mass of them made my knees quake. Their muscles were not for show. Every fiber of them spoke of survival, of battle. I had seen men fight and die, but these women were a different kind of threat. And yet, when the taller one's eyes met mine, I saw not fury but fear. Human fear, raw and desperate. That fear, more than anything, pushed me to act. Sliding my arms under the shorter one first, I realized just how impossible the task was. She was heavier than any steer I'd lifted, and I was barely keeping her from crushing me under her weight. The taller one struggled to her feet beside me, her massive frame swaying but steady, and together we moved toward the cabin. Each step was a gamble. If I faltered, if we misjudged an angle, I could break a rib or worse. The wind picked up again. The smell of wet earth mingled with blood and something acrid, and in the distance, faint shadows hinted at movement. Riders. They came slowly at first, 5 figures on horseback, observing from the ridge like wolves circling a wounded prey. I counted rifles slung across their backs. Even from here, I could see the paint streaked across their faces. They were Apache warriors, skilled, disciplined, and merciless if provoked. My chest tightened, every instinct screaming to hide the women, but time was against us. I whispered to the conscious one, her voice deep and commanding even in weakness. She told me of her sister, of their plight, and the simplicity of it struck me like lightning. She had refused a marriage proposal from the chief's son. That alone was enough to mark them for death or capture. My own freedom to choose, to say no, had always been a given. For them, it was a gamble with life itself. By the time we reached the cabin, the doorway proved too narrow for the taller one's shoulders. We had to pivot her sideways, careful with every motion. Behind us, the wind carried the thrum of hooves growing louder. The lead warrior raised his hand, signaling, pointing directly at the cabin. The blood trail would give us away. I counted my ammunition silently, 12 rounds in the rifle, 6 in the pistol, far too few for the odds we faced. And yet, the conscious giant I honor assessed the horizon with a practiced eye, calm despite her injuries. There was something unnerving about her composure, a quiet promise that if it came to it, she could kill or protect with effortless authority. Then the other one, Ital, weak but aware, murmured to her sister in rapid Apache. Iona's expression darkened with every word. Finally, she looked at me. "Warriors not here for us," she said, the words sinking deep. Here for you." My mind raced. I had never wronged the Apache, yet somehow, months ago, I had become part of this story. I remembered her, the girl I had saved near the river, half drowned, fevered, and helpless. I had returned her to her people without a thought, and yet that single act had created a debt, one that now tied my life to theirs. The first shots of thunder rolled over the horizon, a storm approaching again, carrying with it the sense that time was running out. I pressed my back to the cabin wall, the massive women beside me ready to act if necessary. My ranch, 15 miles from the nearest neighbor, 40 from town, felt more like a trap than a sanctuary. If the Apache found us, or the settlers discovered their presence, all of us would die. Yet in that moment, staring into Iona's dark, unyielding eyes, I understood something I had never known before. This was not about politics, land, or law. This was about two human beings bleeding in front of me, and the choice to act on compassion, however foolish it seemed, was mine alone. I had 3 minutes, maybe less. 3 minutes to decide whether to save them and face almost certain death, or leave them to the elements and the hunters pursuing them. I chose life, for them, for me, and for the truth that sometimes a man's courage is measured not in how well he fights, but in how fiercely he chooses to protect those weaker than himself. The Apache warriors didn't move immediately. They lingered at the ridge, scanning the valley with precision born of years surviving the unforgiving desert. I pressed my back against the cabin wall, heart hammering, while Iona steadied her sister, whose breathing was shallow but alive. Every instinct in me screamed to barricade the door, yet the knowledge that these women could crush a man like a twig kept me frozen. The taller one's dark eyes flicked to mine, measuring, assessing whether I could handle the truth that was about to unfold. Then Iona spoke softly, almost in a whisper, yet her voice carried authority beyond the walls of the cabin. She explained the blood debt. How months ago I had saved the youngest daughter of Chief Nailish from drowning in a river, an act that now demanded my protection under Apache law. I remembered the girl vividly, half drowned, burning with fever, too weak to speak. I had guided her home, never imagining that one act of compassion would bind my life to theirs in ways I could not yet comprehend. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth and gunpowder from the distant ridge. The warriors began their descent, cautious, deliberate, like predators who knew their prey might bite back. Iona's hand gripped my arm, firm and reassuring. Ital, despite her injury, rose to her full, imposing height, every movement a display of lethal potential. I realized then that what I was facing wasn't a battle of men versus women. It was a standoff between forces of will, law, and survival. Time seemed to stretch, each second a knife-edge decision. Do nothing, and the sisters would die or be captured. Act, and we risked bringing the wrath of an entire war party upon the ranch. My throat was dry, yet when I opened my mouth, it was Iona's eyes that gave me strength. The choice was clear. I would not abandon them. The wind whipped again, rattling the cabin shutters, as the first horsemen approached closer, their shadows long and menacing. This was the moment that would define everything: my courage, their survival, and the invisible threads of honor that bound us together. The Apache warriors crested the ridge, silent and deliberate, their horses stepping through the mud with a predator's patience. My cabin suddenly felt smaller than ever, the walls pressing in as if they knew the violence waiting outside. I could hear the wind whistling through broken fence posts, carrying the faint metallic scent of blood from the women's injuries. Iona moved to the doorway first, her towering frame casting an almost unnatural shadow across the yard. Her presence alone made the warriors hesitate, as if they recognized her authority despite the distance between them. I stepped forward, hands raised, my voice steady despite the panic gnawing at my gut. "I am Ezekiel Marsh," I called out, trying to make my voice carry across the field. 3 moons ago, I saved Chief Nailish's youngest daughter from drowning. She is alive because of me. The words felt heavy, as if each one carried the weight of fate itself. I could see the lead warrior's dark eyes narrow, scanning my form, then flicking toward the women, understanding something I didn't yet fully grasp. Iona's voice cut through the tense air, low but commanding. She declared our connection, her authority unmistakable. Even wounded, her presence radiated power. I felt a strange reassurance as I watched her, a silent promise that we had leverage. Yet the warriors were not ordinary men. They were trained, disciplined, and patient, willing to wait for the smallest mistake. The wind shifted again, and I realized we had mere moments to act before the first move could trigger a cascade of violence. Time slowed as the standoff held, the horses pawing at the earth, hooves sending up clouds of dust. Every heartbeat thudded like a drum, echoing my fear and determination. I knew that the next words, the next choice, could mean life or death. For me, for Iona and Ital, and perhaps even for the ranch itself. The Apache leader raised his hand slightly, signaling caution, respect, and warning all at once. That was when I understood fully. This wasn't just about saving two women. It was about honor, blood debt, and the fragile balance between two worlds on the brink of war. The silence stretched across the yard like a taut rope ready to snap. I could see every muscle in Iona's shoulders, every shadow on Ital's massive frame, as if their bodies themselves were weapons poised to strike. The warriors waited, patient and unreadable, while I struggled to keep my voice steady. I did what anyone would have done, I said, trying to explain, though the words felt fragile against the weight of the situation. I saved a life. That's all. One of the riders, younger than the rest, spurred his horse closer, his rifle glinting in the sun. "You harbor fugitives, white man," he shouted, the tone sharp, accusatory, demanding obedience I couldn't give. My mind raced. One wrong word, one hesitating movement, and a bullet could find my chest before I even realized it. I looked at the two giant women behind me, their eyes calm yet dangerous, and understood that their mere presence had shifted the balance of power. They were royalty among their people, trained from birth to fight and command. Then Iona spoke, her voice carrying across the yard, deep and unwavering. She named the blood debt, recounting how I had saved the chief's youngest daughter from drowning, a life I had risked nothing to preserve except my own conscience. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and I saw the lead warrior's expression change. Recognition, perhaps, or the acknowledgement of an obligation that even seasoned fighters could not ignore. Ital, despite her injuries, straightened her massive frame and stepped forward, a silent threat that only a giant could convey without raising a weapon. The young warrior hesitated, glancing back at his companions. I felt a strange mix of fear and relief, realizing that the law of the Apache, of honor and blood debt, could give me leverage even when every other option seemed dead. But the reprieve was short. In the distance, a faint drumbeat of hooves grew steadily louder. Federal lawmen, alerted by the reports of Apache movement, were approaching. My chest tightened. If they discovered the women in my cabin, there would be no negotiation. Their rules were absolute, and mercy was a stranger. Every second counted now. We had to hold, to protect, and to navigate a path through a tangle of laws, customs, and survival instincts that could collapse around us in an instant. The sound of hooves grew louder, echoing across the valley, and my stomach churned with a mix of fear and determination. Federal lawmen were approaching faster now, their horses kicking up clouds of dust that blurred the horizon. Iona's shadow stretched long across the yard, her towering presence an unspoken warning that any rash movement would be met with overwhelming force. I could feel the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. One misstep, and the lives of two giants and my own would be forfeit. I stepped toward the door, raising my hands to show I meant no sudden violence, while Ital positioned herself behind Iona, her broad frame a living shield. The lead lawman's voice carried across the dirt yard, sharp and commanding. "Marsh, we know Apache are here. Step aside, and no one gets hurt." My mind raced. Every instinct told me to comply, yet every ounce of honor and compassion refused to abandon the women behind me. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain steady. "They're not here to fight," I said, trying to make the words carry truth, though my heart pounded like a drum. "They're injured. I've been helping them." The men's eyes narrowed, scanning the yard, their hands brushing against their weapons. Outside, the warriors on the ridge paused, sensing the tension, waiting for the right moment to act if necessary. Iona's eyes met mine, dark, intense, unwavering, and I understood that we had one chance to survive this without bloodshed. Then one of the lawmen dismounted, stepping closer, his boots crunching on the dry soil. The wind carried his words clearly. "We have orders from the territorial governor. Anyone harboring Apache will be brought in for questioning about the Morrison killings." My stomach dropped. If they discovered the sisters, if even a single one of them saw the injuries and beadwork marking them as highborn warriors, we would all be condemned. Iona straightened, her almost 7-foot frame imposing even in the morning light, and for the first time I realized the full weight of what she and Ittel could do. Every man present instinctively stepped back a pace, the fear of underestimating them evident. I took a deep breath, knowing the next words, the next decisions, could mean life or death. And yet, I had no choice but to stand, to claim the blood debt, and to risk everything for the two women who had trusted me with their lives. I knew I had only seconds to act before the lawmen moved in. Sweat dripped down my face, my hands gripping my rifle, yet I kept my voice calm, steady, though my pulse throbbed like a drum in my ears. "I am Ezekiel Marsh," I called out, letting my voice carry across the yard. 3 moons ago, I saved Chief Nailish's youngest daughter from drowning. She lives because of me. This man saved her life, and Apache law demands her father's protection in return. The words hung in the air, strange and heavy, like a lifeline I was casting into uncertain waters. The lawmen exchanged uneasy glances. Even the youngest among them faltered, realizing this was no ordinary claim. Behind me, Iona's towering frame stiffened, muscles taut, ready to act if they pressed further. Ittel shifted slightly, her massive presence a silent warning. Any aggression toward us would be met with overwhelming force. I could feel the weight of their combined strength, more than any rifle or badge could match, and yet the danger remained. One false move, one misheard word, and bullets would fly. Then Iona spoke, her voice low and commanding. She named the blood debt openly, declaring my protection under the sacred law of her people. The lead lawman, Kane, hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Federal law, he knew, was absolute, but the territory had recognized Apache legal customs in treaty, a fact I hadn't fully understood until that moment. I swallowed, realizing that the balance of power had shifted entirely. We weren't just arguing. We were testing the boundaries between two worlds, frontier law and ancient tribal code. Time stretched as Kane's eyes moved between me and the two towering women, weighing the impossible odds. His rifle hand twitched, but hesitation kept the barrel low. The distant sound of hooves warned that reinforcements, both Apache and Federal, could arrive at any moment. I felt every heartbeat, every tremor in the air, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Behind Iona and Ittel, I felt a strange mix of awe and gratitude. The giants I had saved now held my life in their hands, their silence louder than any command. Then, on the northern ridge, the distant dust of approaching horses hinted at what would decide everything. Chief Nailish himself, riding with a small group of elders. The ground beneath us seemed to hold its breath, the moment stretching, taut with danger, honor, and a truth older than the frontier itself. Whatever came next, the night of judgment had arrived, and there was no turning back. The first light of dawn revealed the approaching riders as more than distant shadows. Chief Nailish rode at the front, his posture upright and commanding, accompanied by 5 elders, their painted faces formal and deliberate, every movement exuding authority. The dust from their horses swirled around them, the air thick with tension and the scent of the desert. I stepped to the edge of the cabin, flanked by Iona and Ittel, feeling smaller than ever, yet strangely reassured by the giants beside me. Cain and his men straightened, rifles ready, but even they faltered as the chief and his elders approached. There was no aggression in their gait, only measured confidence that demanded respect. The moment felt ceremonial, a delicate balance between law, honor, and survival. I realized that everything, the lives of the women, my own, the fragile peace of the ranch, now depended on the words this man would speak. Chief Nailish dismounted smoothly, his eyes sharp, calculating and unyielding. He surveyed the yard, the cabin, the towering forms of his daughters, and finally, he rested his gaze on me. "Ezekiel Marsh," he said in a voice that carried authority across the dusty expanse. "You have saved my daughters. You have honored life. But you are not merely a witness. You are now a part of the law that binds us." His words were clear, heavy with consequence. Iona stood beside me, her massive frame a living testament to the power and reach of her people. Even injured, she radiated authority, her eyes unwavering. Ittel, slightly behind, mirrored her sister's resolve, a silent statement of loyalty and expectation. Cain shifted, clearly uneasy, sensing that this was not a simple legal negotiation. Federal authority was absolute on paper, yet here, tribal law held weight, and it was about to assert itself. The chief spoke again, slower this time, as if measuring each word. 3 lives saved create obligation beyond measure. Life for life is the law. Blood debt must be honored. Yet, he paused, his gaze moving from me to Iona and Ittel, honor can also choose its own path. The choice rests with those who lived, those who protected, and those who judge. I felt my chest tighten. The judgment of this man, of these giants, would determine whether we survived the day or perished in the dust of the frontier. Chief Nailish's eyes swept across the yard, lingering on the 2 towering figures who had survived by the slimmest of margins, then settling on me. The morning light caught the glint of the necklace I had unknowingly claimed, a fragile symbol of my link to his people. The tension was suffocating. Even the wind seemed to pause as though waiting for the chief's words. I felt every heartbeat like a drumbeat of fate, knowing that the wrong answer could turn this delicate standoff into a massacre. "Ezekiel Marsh," the chief said, his voice deliberate, resonating with the authority of a man who had faced more winters than I could imagine. "You have honored life. You have risked your own for the blood of my daughters. This act cannot be undone, and it demands recognition." His gaze moved to Iona, who stood as tall as any man I had ever seen, shoulders broad, eyes unwavering, radiating the lethal confidence of someone who had survived countless battles. Even wounded, she seemed untouchable. Ittel, slightly behind, followed her sister's lead, her imposing frame a silent testament to the danger any aggressor would face. I felt their unspoken message: we act together, or none of us survive. The chief's voice cut through the quiet. Federal lawmen have their orders, yet Apache law is older than their papers, stronger than their guns. You have claimed protection under blood debt. The law is clear. He turned to Cain and the marshals, his words carrying an authority that even rifles and badges could not override. I swallowed hard, the enormity of the moment pressing down on me. Outside, the marshals shifted uneasily, realizing that this was no longer a simple matter of arrests or accusations. The chief's presence, combined with the formidable strength of Iona and Ittel, made any aggression not just dangerous but potentially suicidal. I realized that everything, My life, the women's safety, the fragile peace of this land, now hinged on the chief's decision. The air seemed charged with electricity, each second stretching into eternity as we waited for the judgment that would define the course of our lives. Chief Nailish took a deliberate step forward, the morning dust swirling around his boots. His eyes, sharp and calculating, settled on me again. "Ezekiel Marsh," he began, his voice steady and unyielding, "your courage and honor have been proven. You have risked your life for my daughters, and that debt cannot be ignored." The words carried like thunder across the yard, silencing the murmurs of wind and horses alike. I felt a strange mixture of relief and terror, knowing the weight of what he was about to declare would shape our futures irrevocably. The chief's gaze then shifted to Iona and Ittel. Even in her injured state, Iona's towering form radiated authority, her muscles taut with controlled strength. Ittel mirrored her sister's resolve, a silent pillar of power and protection. I realized then that these were not merely daughters of a chief. They were living embodiments of law, tradition, and lethal precision. Their presence alone made any threat of violence from the federal marshals seem inconceivable. "You have claimed protection under blood debt," Chief Nailish continued, his voice calm yet carrying absolute authority. "Federal law may seek to impose its will, but Apache law binds us to honor life and bravery. Ezekiel Marsh, from this moment, you are under my protection. No harm shall come to you while my blood debt stands." Relief washed over me, though it was tempered by the knowledge that this protection, though powerful, placed me in a web of responsibility far beyond what I had ever imagined. Kane and his men exchanged glances, uneasy and frustrated. They were trained to follow orders without question, yet the sheer force of tradition and the overwhelming presence of the sisters made hesitation unavoidable. Even the youngest marshal's hand hovered uncertainly near his rifle. Chief Nailish's voice cut through the tension once more, final and unyielding. "These women are my daughters. Their choices are their own. Their safety is paramount. Anyone who would interfere will answer to both Apache law and the consequences of defying my word." As the chief mounted his horse to depart with the elders, I felt the enormity of what had just occurred. The immediate danger was over, but the frontier was never truly safe. Federal scrutiny, political machinations, and the delicate balance of honor and survival would continue to test us. Yet in that moment, with the two towering sisters beside me and the weight of their trust upon my shoulders, I understood that courage, compassion, and respect for life could create alliances stronger than any law or gun. The morning sun stretched its light across the valley, painting the ranch in a golden hue that belied the chaos of the previous night. With Chief Nailish and his elders gone, a quiet settled over the land, but the tension lingered like a shadow in every corner of the yard. Iona and Ittel moved beside me, their enormous frames lending both comfort and awe. Despite their injuries, their presence was commanding, proof that strength and resilience could coexist with vulnerability. The weight of what had transpired pressed on me. I had become part of a world I barely understood, bound by honor, blood debt, and the unwavering trust of two giants. The sisters wasted no time assessing the ranch. Iona's eyes scanned every structure, every fence, every tool. Her mind worked like a general's, calculating repairs, improvements, and defenses that would have taken me weeks to imagine. Ittel, equally imposing, moved with deliberate purpose, her hands strong and precise, assisting in the tasks that once seemed impossible alone. The ranch, once failing and quiet, began to transform under their guidance. Horses were better tended, fences reinforced, and new areas cleared for crops and storage. I marveled at their skill, realizing that survival on the frontier required more than grit. It demanded vision, strategy, and relentless determination. Even as the land grew stronger, so did our bond. Iona's laughter, deep and resonant, echoed across the yard as she demonstrated how to handle the heavy timber, her strength making light of what would have crushed me. Ittel's careful instructions, firm but patient, revealed a sharp intelligence that commanded respect without demanding it. Their companionship brought a strange mixture of pride and humility. I, a solitary rancher, had become part of something larger, a nexus of culture, courage, and human connection. Yet the frontier is never without consequence. Federal authorities continued their surveillance, whispers of investigation filtering through the towns beyond. I understood that our survival relied not just on physical might, but on diplomacy, wit, and a delicate balance between worlds. Sitting beside the sisters in the fading light, I realized the truth. Sometimes, the most extraordinary strength is measured not by brute force, but by the courage to protect life and honor promises. And in that moment, I felt that whatever trials awaited us, we were ready to face them together. Months passed, and the valley slowly transformed under our combined efforts. The once failing ranch had become a thriving hub, a place where Apache families traded with settlers under the uneasy but respected protection of Chief Nailish law. Iona and Ittel, still towering and formidable, moved through the property with ease, their presence commanding not just attention, but respect. Their strength was more than physical. It radiated intelligence, strategy, and leadership, shaping the ranch into a place of both safety and opportunity. I, Ezekiel Marsh, no longer felt alone in the world. Their trust had woven me into a family larger than blood, and the connection ran deeper than any frontier law could dictate. The adoption necklace I had once worn had become more than a symbol of protection. It was a reminder of the bond forged through courage, compassion, and honor. Iona's laughter now filled the barn as she guided horses and wagons with unmatched power, her almost 7-foot frame moving like poetry in motion. Ittel, equally impressive despite her slightly smaller stature, coordinated the trading posts, keeping meticulous accounts and ensuring fairness between settlers and Apache alike. Together, they made life not just manageable but extraordinary. The ranch had become a beacon of possibility, a rare place where cultural divides could be bridged through respect and understanding. Yet the most profound change was within me. I had survived the trials of the frontier not through strength alone, but through the courage to act when compassion demanded it. Saving the sisters, honoring blood debt, and embracing a role I had never anticipated had reshaped my very identity. I was no longer just a solitary rancher. I had become protector, negotiator, and, in an unexpected twist of fate, part of one of the most influential families in the region. Standing beside Iona and Ittel in the warm glow of sunset, I realized life on the frontier was unpredictable, harsh, and often merciless, but it could also be beautiful, deeply rewarding, and transformative for those willing to act with honor. As I looked across the thriving ranch, the laughter of settlers and Apache alike mingling with the distant calls of wild horses, I understood that courage, compassion, and respect for life had forged a legacy far greater than any law or gun could ever dictate. The giant sisters had not only survived, they had reshaped my world entirely, teaching me that true strength is measured by the hearts it protects and the lives it changes. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. If you enjoyed this frontier tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the next video to witness another story of courage, honor, and destiny in the Wild West. Your support helps keep these unforgettable stories alive.